the notes. I get to close, which is great. Thanks, Rich. Yeah, yesterday was a big day, but I think before we talk about yesterday, this event just gets better and better, I think, because it just does what we want it to do, which is just have, our customers communicate, to our investor audience about their business. When Money Me is in one of our investor slides, how can I do that justice by having a logo there? So people will say, what is that program? And you can give it a minute because you've got, you're trying to cram everything into a 30-minute meeting. So to have, Clay get up there and talk about that, I mean, you can just see the passion of these guys, right? To listen to Gaetano, who I've had many a wine with over the 10 years, it's that passion that drives our business. I don't come to work every day thinking, where is our next opportunity? What's our next deal? Because we've got hundreds of Gaetanos around the world, and Clay and Mike that are waking up every day and thinking about how do they beat their competition in their market, and how do they use us to do it. And so you've got these minds that are waking up every day saying, I want to do this first, I want to do this first, I want to do this first. That drives our business, right? I mean, that's why we've only got in sales, Brandon, probably 10 people, out of 275, because our bigger job is how do we support these partners, right? I mean, how do we facilitate their success? When Gaetano talked about some of the firsts that we've done. When in 2015, when we did the first web-enabled Mastercard, it's our risk people talking to Mastercard, and they're saying, you want to do what? How does that work? And so you take them through the process and the journey of doing that. You get them on board, you launch it with one partner, and then you can monetize it elsewhere. When Betsy, Andrew Betts is our Chief Risk Officer, when we started working with Clayton back probably, 6 months ago, Rich? This, to our knowledge, is the first Apple Pay approved revolving line of credit product in the world. So when we're working on the product design and we're taking it to Mastercard, they're saying, it's what? Is it a credit card? Kind of. Is it a prepaid card? Yeah, kind of. Is it a gift card? No. But you take Mastercard through this kind of journey and this evolution of what that product is. Apple Pay had never come across it before. I mean, they're used to credit cards being in their wallet, but not a prepaid card and a revolving line of credit on a prepaid card. So a lot of these things are firsts, driven by pure passion and innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. And our job is how do we support it at the end of the day? How do we become their enabler, to success, and not become a roadblock, not become the person who can't do it, but the person who can do it. So I echo Rich's comments. Thanks to everyone for coming, because you explain our business better than we can. I won't spend a long time on this because we spent a lot of time on this yesterday, but I'll just skip through most of this really, and I'm just going to go to there, because we've years ago, I think, investors would look at us and say, you have a very complicated business, EML. You're in a lot of different industries. We'd say, actually, we're in the one industry of just providing payment technology and financial technology to companies that are in different verticals. So whether it's in the salary packaging industry and it's supporting Smart Group or Macmillan's, or it's now in the kind of lending industry, or it's in the consumer finance industry, or it's in gift cards, or it's in digital incentives, our technology is that's what we are. We're the technology platform for that, and we rely on their expertise to be successful in that market. PFS that we announced the deal on yesterday just has a different technology set and a different product set. Very complementary to us. About 40% of their business is is either consumer relatable programs, acting as kind of banks for unbanked individuals, or digital banks in the case of the Rebellions and the NLBs, Fintonic that was in the presentation, which is in Spain, launching Banxibo, which is in Eastern Europe, and digital banking is a pretty powerful trend, right? Because you've got companies innovating against organisations with enormous legacy systems that just can't move, quickly enough. So when you look at the Revolut, if people have downloaded the kind of Revolut app, Monzo, Starling, I mean these companies are, they're unicorns. I think they're all multi-billion-dollar, valuation businesses, because they own the customer experience part of that journey, right? They're not banks in the true sense of the word, and their technology is by and large always outsourced. But what they own is what they provide you is a phenomenal user experience. If you want a loan at the end of the day, or you want to access credit, you'll still be talking to those banks, right? I mean, Revolut it's not a bank, so it doesn't have a balance sheet to do mortgages. So in time, you'll see these kind of neobanks broker mortgages, broker other credit products, and that will become a revenue stream. But in Europe, this is a big evolving trend. There are 4 or 5, I think, in the US that are kind of out there. There's one that's what's Chime's worth? $5 billion was its last valuation. So we now have the opportunity to play in that space, whereas we otherwise wouldn't have, because we hadn't built the technology and didn't have that product set. The second part of their business is a bit of back to the future for EML, which started really, one of our earliest products was welfare distribution and working for not-for-profits in Aussie. Hard to scale, we found, just because it's a very fragmented business. And these guys have done an exceptional job in doing just that, in scaling it. So roughly £1 billion, pounds, 40% of revenues supporting that. The UN for things like refugee resettlement, refugee welfare. The one in the middle here, which no one can read, is a Finnish government program. HM government is local council, so it's payments of support one way, shape or form to residents of the UK through their local government. And Carer Card, it's funny that some of these things are not new, because we've spoken about them and looked at them, but they evolve at different times. So Carer Card is a private company set up to manage people with disabilities. So if I have someone who has a disability and requires care, it's the ability for me to load money onto that individual's card, the carer, who then look after the financial well-being of the person requiring assistance. So payment of all of their financial needs, not dissimilar to the kind of NDIS model in some ways. So we get to learn from different companies around the world about how they're doing that, and we get to kind of ingest that best practice. And then the third one over there is multi-currency travel cards, which again we hadn't built. It just wasn't part of our portfolio. So for those people that have a Qantas or a Virgin card, which would be everyone here almost, and you flip it, that's your travel card, right? If you activate it. We never built it in Aussie because there were a dozen of them. So and you think about if I want to buy one of these things, where do I go? So if you're travelling overseas, you would probably go to the post office to get a passport photo done. The post office sells a travel card. Or I buy one through the travel agent, and the travel agent would do it too. So Travelex has one, and the bunch of the other travel agents. Or I go to the bank because I'm looking for hard currency, and the banks have one too. So we never bothered to build it because we thought, well, we'd be number 13 in a market, and number 13 can't make money. So that just wasn't part of what we were interested in doing. But these guys had built it. So now it provides an opportunity for us to look at these products not only as they sell more through Europe, but also through our other markets. One of the in the recent client wins down there, Avios, for example, is the frequent flyer program for British Airways, Aer Lingus, Vueling, and one other, can't remember who the fourth airline is, Iberia. So, you know, that launches next year. You know, if you went on the Avios website, they would tell you how many participants they've got in that loyalty scheme. But that is just not something EML would have had the technology to bid for, but PFS did. I talked about this yesterday. There was a question on the tenure of the guy. So the founder Noel and Lee, who's been there for 10 years. So Noel will be there for a year as CEO, and Lee is there for 3. Noel may well stay longer than 1. So we're not punting him out the door at the end of at the end of a year. But as mature conversations, you've got someone who's founded a business that's a really successful business, who has worked for himself for 12 years. You don't necessarily just transition to work for someone again automatically. And I've been in both sides of that camp. So he's contracted there for a year, and he may stay longer than that too. But we're open to, if he finds working for me unbearable, or Brandon unbearable, because Pete's definitely unbearable, because I've worked for him, I can attest to that. If he finds us all unbearable, then at the end of the year, he'll probably move. And Lee will be there for a bit longer. Getting to, well, just that really. And as well as talking about the acquisition, I think one of the things you can see at EMLCon is the network effects and the kind of interconnectedness of all these customers and all these partners. So as as we start building this product for Clayton that is now live, we haven't been sitting around doing that. So we're already in discussions with how we facilitate that in the US, right? We're already talking about how we facilitate that in the UK. And as our partners grow, we grow. That's the beauty of a B2B model, where we're not at the customer front-facing part of that business, right? But we've got people who really know that business well. And what these guys do, we can then bring to other markets as well. So, I mean, your comment about Europe, Gaetano was perfect, because yes, you've got a single payments network. Yes, you've got uniform laws with, payments directive and money laundering directives and so forth. But the cultural differences are huge, right? So we look to work with our partners in those, in those different markets. So there are things that PFS are doing, but you can't be in every country servicing every need at once. But you can when you use partners that are already in that market and relationships you already have to kind of speed up your flywheel and kind of get revenue accelerating quicker than you could do it if you tried to do everything yourself. In this case, it certainly it gives us scale as an organisation. It just broadens that product suite to include digital banking and B2C, GPR and others, and multi-currency. It gives us more leverage, obviously, because better kind of negotiating rates with the schemes and kind of input costs. And so for us, it's a very complementary fit. The vans piece, I was listening to Mike chat, and obviously we do that in the US. It's a big growing part of our business in a GDV sense, and there are companies that do a lot of cross-border vans, right, which we don't do, because but it's an area of opportunity for us now to work with partners to look at that. This little thing here is a country, by the way. That's Malta. So I tried to add up and I got to 23, but I missed that one there. But we've got 24 people. We do have a joke internally that if you don't have an army or a currency, you're not in fact a country. So Scotland would go out of there. We're probably in about 6 countries, I think, maybe. But that's our little definition. But you know, in a revenue sense and a mixed sense, you know, Europe obviously becomes a big part of our business. It's, you know, 60-odd% of revenues, and in an exciting market. I won't go through that because we don't have time for all that. But you know, from a growth sense, if you put the two companies together on a pro forma basis for the full FY20 year, which is our guidance and their forecast, that we have gone through, EY has gone through, acting on our behalf, ABC has gone through, acting as our investment bank, ANZ has gone through, acting as one of the lead debt banks. We can't all get it wrong, so I take comfort in numbers, and you know, it's a business that would have minus transaction costs, GDV of more than $18 billion, and that's a pretty sizable, you know, prepaid business in the scheme of companies like us around the world. You know, revenue would be north of 200 mil. The gross margins, the growth rates are very similar. The EBITDA margins are very similar, and our EBITDA would be somewhere in the 65 million range for that year. So whilst we haven't provided guidance beyond that, the market will come to grips with what growth rates they impute, you know, onto these numbers when it comes to looking at FY21, and my job will be to talk those down in all cases so we can beat them. But it certainly gives us scale, and the numbers are great, right? I mean, business gets bigger, you know, that's all good. But what it allows us to do is invest. So that, you know, as the company gets bigger, last year we invested, I think, 5 million more in headcount cost to bring in, you know, skilled people and with expertise that, you know, that we needed, and that have really helped with this transaction. You're always investing in technology. You're always investing in product. The more money you make, the more money, you know, you can also invest. So it gives us a great platform for the future. I won't go into it closed yesterday, so everyone who's a shareholder will get their rights, but it was pretty well supported, and it just gives us a great position. If I'm a salesperson now at EML, I look at gift solutions. You know, I can sell physical gift card solutions in the mall space. I can sell them in the incentive space. I can do digital gifting in both of those environments as well. I can do gaming. I can do salary packaging. I can do digital banking. I can do FX. That's a broad remit of opportunities, right, for salespeople to look at. Our job here really is to, as Peter said, don't screw it up. So let them do what they're good at doing. So what we will do is integrate that business as we've done elsewhere. We'll let them continue to grow as they are. And post-close, which is probably roughly, it could be 90 days or more, just subject to regulatory approval, we'll get the sales teams, in fact, I think Rich is there in December, the sales teams working on, well, how do we start cross-selling, some of these products? Because cross-sell is not in the business case at all. I mean, we just took it out because it's an unknown quantity. Synergy savings and those things are a known quantity. Growth rates and business performance are a known quantity, but cross-sell and upsell aren't. So we'll work through that in the course of the next 6 months, and that'll be in our numbers for next year at some point. So that's probably all I'll say on that transaction. But just in closing, and then I can kind of answer any questions on that. Again, I'll just echo Rich's comments and thanks to our guests who attend. I mean, these guys are CEOs of their businesses. They've got other things to do. They come from around the world to talk about us and our business, which they're not doing for, they're not paid performers. They're not, we're not paying them to come out and talk on our behalf. So we really appreciate their time. We really appreciate all of your time as well for taking the morning off. And hopefully it's informative, and you can learn not only about EML but some different segments and how our customers are performing. I want Rich to stand up for a second if you can, Rich. And Mel, where are you, Mel Saunders? You're not going to want to get out from the back here. Where are you? She's having a coffee. She's probably passed out. You're up on stage, Mel. Rich, up you. Get up there. Never been on stage? Come on, get up there. I mean, Rich is our Chief Marketing Officer. There is a huge amount of work that goes into today's event, and Mel is my EA and a bunch of other people's EA, and has been doing just as much organisation for today as well. So well done, guys. Good job. Take a bow. The guys from Prodigy, phenomenal. If people don't use them as your agency, well, you should, because they're bloody rippers. Great fellas. They come around the world. I mean, Wade, I don't know how many trips, how many offices have you been now? You've been to all of our offices multiple times. I mean, get up here. Yeah. So when we partnered with him, three years ago? 2 years ago. And where's Matt? Where is he? Where's he hiding somewhere? And Wade has been to our offices. He's spent time in the offices. He spends time with the people. He interviews everyone. It isn't just guff. Let's do a nice presentation, because he actually understands what we do, and they're bloody phenomenal to work with. So
thanks, Tom.
Well played, mate. Thank you very much. Because without this. Without you guys, it doesn't come off. So it's a bit hard for us to do that.
It's great to be part of the business.
And so thank you all. And without, sorry?
Pleasure. It's great to be part of this.
It's great part. And with that, I'll bring the morning to a close. Thanks, everyone.